What if the oceans boiled away? The water cycle moves water from Earth's surface into the atmosphere, and then back down to the Earth's surface again. But what would happen if something caused that process to speed up? Let's find out. Hi, it's me, and this is my channel. In this video, we are going to explore what would happen if the oceans boiled away. You might think that boiling water refers only to water in a pot on a stove. However, water can also boil when it reaches its boiling point at 100 degrees Celsius or 212 degrees Fahrenheit. If the oceans boiled, the water would turn into water vapor and escape into the atmosphere. And yes, it would be a little weird to walk on the bottom of the ocean, but let's not get ahead of ourselves just yet. To understand how the oceans could boil, we need to know a little bit about how boiling works. When water boils, it forms bubbles of water vapor. These bubbles rise to the surface and pop, releasing more water vapor into the air. At the surface, the water vapor escapes into the atmosphere. For this to happen, the heat needs to come from somewhere. The most obvious source is the sun. Currently, the average temperature of the ocean is around 17 degrees Celsius or 63 degrees Fahrenheit. It varies from about 4 degrees Celsius or 39 degrees Fahrenheit at the poles to 30 degrees Celsius or 86 degrees Fahrenheit near the equator. To boil all the world's oceans, the water would need to be heated to over 100 degrees Celsius or 212 degrees Fahrenheit. This would require an incredible amount of energy. The total energy contained in the oceans is known as their heat capacity. It measures the amount of energy needed to raise the temperature of the oceans by 1 degree Celsius or 1 degree Fahrenheit. Heat capacity is calculated by multiplying the mass of the water by its specific heat. The specific heat of water is the amount of energy required to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius or 1 degree Fahrenheit. For water, the specific heat is 4.18 joules per gram per degree Celsius. The mass of the oceans is about 1.332 billion grams, or 1.332 sextillion grams. Multiplying the specific heat of water by the mass of the oceans gives us the heat capacity of the oceans. So the heat capacity of the oceans is about 5.48 billion joules, or 5.48 yotajoules. The power of the sun hitting the earth is about 174 petawatts. A petawatt is 10 to the 15 watts. To raise the temperature of the oceans by 1 degree Celsius or 1 degree Fahrenheit per second, we would need about 54,800 petawatts. That is 54.8 terawatts. To put this into perspective, the total power consumption of the United States is about 3.4 terawatts. So it would take nearly 16 times the total power consumption of the United States to raise the temperature of the oceans by 1 degree Celsius or 1 degree Fahrenheit per second. Therefore, it would take an enormous amount of energy to boil the world's oceans. But if somehow the oceans were superheated, what would happen next? Water boils when it reaches its boiling point, which is the temperature at which the vapor pressure of the liquid equals the ambient pressure surrounding the liquid. At standard atmospheric pressure, the boiling point of water is 100 degrees Celsius or 212 degrees Fahrenheit. However, the boiling point of water can be lowered by adding salt or other impurities. Additionally, as altitude increases, atmospheric pressure decreases, which means that water boils at a lower temperature. For example, at the summit of Mount Everest, water boils at about 70 degrees Celsius or 160 degrees Fahrenheit. If the oceans boiled, the water would turn into water vapor and escape into the atmosphere. This would cause the sea level to drop dramatically. In fact, all the water in the oceans would eventually evaporate, leaving behind dry land. As the water vapor in the atmosphere condenses, it would form clouds. These clouds would then release the water back down to the Earth's surface in the form of rain or snow. This process is known as the water cycle. However, there is one major difference between the water cycle we know today and the water cycle that would occur if the oceans boiled. During the water cycle, the water that evaporates from the oceans is replaced by water from rivers, lakes, and groundwater. However, if the oceans boiled away, there would be no more water to replace it. Eventually, the rain would stop and the Earth's surface would become completely dry. If the oceans boiled away, life on Earth as we know it would cease to exist. Humans and other animals would not be able to survive without water. Plants would also die because they rely on water for photosynthesis. In fact, all the processes that occur on Earth rely on water to some extent. Without water, Earth would be a barren wasteland. But what if the oceans didn't boil away completely? What if only a portion of them boiled away? Let's say half the oceans boiled away. First of all, the sea level would drop by about 100 meters or 328 feet. This would have a major impact on coastal communities. Many cities would be inundated, and millions of people would be displaced. The drop in sea level would also disrupt ocean currents, which play a major role in regulating the Earth's climate. This could lead to more extreme weather events, such as hurricanes, floods, and droughts. Without the buffering effect of the oceans, the Earth's climate would become much more volatile. The temperature on Earth would increase, because water has a high heat capacity and can absorb a lot of energy before its temperature rises. With less water on the planet, the temperature would rise more quickly and more dramatically. This could lead to the melting of the polar ice caps and glaciers, which would raise the sea level. But this would be a temporary reprieve, because eventually all the water on Earth would boil away, leaving the planet completely dry. So what if the oceans didn't boil away completely? What if only a small percentage of them boiled away, say 10%? Even this small decrease in water could have significant consequences. According to National Geographic, humans can survive for several weeks without drinking water, but we need water for other things like growing food and generating electricity. If 10% of the world's water evaporated, we would have less water available for these essential activities. We would also have to deal with the displacement of people who live in coastal areas that were inundated. But perhaps the most significant impact of losing 10% of the world's water would be on the environment. Many ecosystems rely on a delicate balance of water to survive. Removing 10% of the world's water would disrupt these ecosystems and could lead to the extinction of many species. It might seem like a far-fetched scenario, but it's not impossible. According to NASA, the amount of water on Earth has been decreasing by about 2% per decade due to human activities such as damming rivers and pumping groundwater. If this trend continues, we could see the oceans boiling away in our lifetime. So what should we do? One way we can slow down the rate at which the oceans are boiling away is by reducing our own water consumption. By making changes in our daily lives, such as taking shorter showers and fixing leaky faucets, we can help preserve this precious resource. We should also invest in new technologies that can help us use water more efficiently, such as desalination plants that can turn seawater into fresh water. The bottom line is that we need to start thinking about the future and taking steps now to ensure that we have enough water for generations to come. If we don't, then one day soon the oceans may indeed boil away, and life as we know it will cease to exist. But what do you think? Is it possible for the oceans to boil away? And if so, what would happen next? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out my others. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.